Omaha's news leader, chronicling the stories and people making a difference in our community. This is KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle.
Good morning, I'm David Earl. Between now and November 6th, we're dedicating all our shows to the upcoming general election. It's part of our year-long commitment to covering the issues and the candidates in 2018. And we're starting with the U.S. Senate race. It began with a crowded field of 10 candidates. It's now down to just 3. Incumbent Republican Deb Fischer, Democrat Jane Raybould, and Libertarian Jim Schultz. And that's who we're starting with today. Jim, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to dive in to the news made this week from who would be your colleague, Senator Ben Sasse. He introduced a series of ethics reform legislation in Washington. Here's the package. No donations from foreign sources. Presidential candidates have to release their tax returns. A public database of congressional settlements. No stock trading for Congress, and no revolving door to lobbyist firms. Jim, I want your take on that. What do you think about that reform package?
I think there's a lot of good things that Ben Sasse has said in the past, and there's a lot of good that's in this package. A couple of places I think he takes it a little too far. First of all, foreign donations are already illegal. So is this just more pandering to try and get some attention? We need to enforce the laws that we have. We don't need to be passing more laws that are redundant. I do agree. I think it could be a good thing to limit the stock trading for current members. I think there's a good case to be made that our current president has violated the emollients clause of the Constitution. Releasing the tax forms, when I become president, you'll be bored to death with my tax return. I don't know that there's really a lot of information that's going to give us a definitive answer on things coming out of tax returns. There's a lot of supplemental information that really needs to go along with that. If we want to look at broadening the financial disclosures, that's something that we can look at.
As far as the revolving door, though, for if you're elected to Congress and then you lose your reelection bid or you decide to retire and you go over to K Street and you make 6 figures as a lobbyist, that's a frequent path for a lot of people. It
is. I'm a little concerned about what that does to industry, what that does to commerce, to the marketplaces, to start saying that people can't move from a public job to a private job. It seems to basically just, if you don't win your reelection, what do you do after that? Somebody's going to come along no matter what you do and say you're violating that restriction. Things like the, what was the fourth?
Stock trading for Congress, political database for congressional settlements.
The congressional settlements, I think, definitely should be public.
Yeah.
That they should have never had that private in the first place. What was the fourth one?
Stock trading for Congress, revolving door for lobbyist firms, releasing tax information. Foreign sources, and then the Congress. Anyway, the point is that there are some measures in here that you think are a step in the right direction.
There are. I think that we do need. There's definitely is a swamp problem, and I think Ben hit it right on the nail that it's both parties.
Yeah.
We've currently got a president right now who was a lifelong Democrat. Now the Republicans have switched around. It's becoming almost impossible to tell the two apart.
Yeah. And so the other piece of news this week that I wanted to ask you about is the budget deficit projections from the CBO. Those came out. We'll put this up on the screen here. The CBO projects in August the budget deficit was $211 billion. That's just the month of August.
Yes.
And so if you keep going out and project all the way to the end of the year, that's a $900 billion budget deficit by the end of the year, almost $1 trillion. How do we fix that? That's a problem, right?
That is a problem. We definitely need to address spending. That's my #1 concern in this campaign, and it needs to be across the board. We can't just sit there and, I know the left would love to take it all from defense. The right would like to take it all from the social programs. We can't sit there and balance the budget off of one or the other. We need to take an entire look We need to take a look at what the government's doing, what it's doing right, which is very little, what it's doing wrong, and instead of, our current policy right now is if government fails at something, we throw more money at it. Instead of admitting that, maybe this wasn't something that the government should have been doing in the first place, start canceling some of those programs that are not fulfilling their promise, and start attacking, everything from military spending to social spending to foreign aid, across the board. Everything needs to be looked at. It all needs to be on the table.
What are some of the top programs that you think are most wasteful right now?
Well, most wasteful, I think, defense has definitely got a lot of waste in it, including the fact that, we are, 17 years now. We just had the 17th anniversary of 9/11. We've been in Afghanistan and Iraq and the Middle East. Some of the kids going over there were in diapers, when the towers came down, and we're still over there. Now we're looking at possible involvement in Syria, where in Syria we would actually be fighting with ISIS against Assad. We can't even tell the players anymore. It's just a quagmire mess. We have no business being over there. We have no goal, and it's time to get out of that. We've spent $1.5 trillion of our deficit in foreign wars in the last 15 years.
Some of the biggest social programs, right, that a lot of people rely on, Social Security and Medicare, right?
Yes.
And we always hear that they're on a pathway to insolvency. How do you fix those programs? Should those programs even be around in the future?
I personally, I think that people would be a lot better off, relying on their personal investments instead of relying on the government. The Social Security was never meant to be a full coverage. It was supposed to be a supplemental income in retirement, expecting that people would have some savings. 401ks, I'd love to see those go up more. The return on a 401k is a lot better than you're ever going to see out of Social Security. But I think we do need to start looking at means testing, for those who have, going into retirement and are not needing that government benefit necessarily. And I think we also need to take a look at, what we're doing with the tax rates and the taxation on Social Security. Right now, there's a cap on wages that are taxed. If we need to take a look at that and move it down, but hopefully, means testing and getting it down to where it's only serving the people that really need it, instead of being a blanket. And if it takes moving some of those into private accounts, I know that was a big Republican push a few years ago. That's an option I'd be more than happy to explore as well.
You brought up tax rates. The Republicans in this Congress passed a tax cut bill. The president signed it. Rates went down for a lot of folks, and some blame that for the deficits that we're seeing right now. Where are you comfortable with tax rates? Do you think they're too high? They need to go even lower?
I think the tax rates are definitely too high, and it's a symptom of the fact that our government is too large. It's trying to do everything for everyone, and getting into every little detail of our lives right now. I'd love to see tax rates cut a lot more, but I'd also like to see them get serious about the spending that goes along with that.
One of the most important jobs that a senator can do if you're elected to the United States Senate is confirm Supreme Court justices. We're in the process of that right now with Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Did you watch any of those confirmation hearings? I
watched a little, and the highlights that people had picked out and said, you got to watch this one.
What do you make of him? Would you vote to confirm him or would you not?
If I were a sitting senator right now, I would vote to confirm him for the simple fact that I would be going in as a third party, and I don't see, that's a privilege of the party that's in control right now. Donald Trump won the election. Like it or not, he gets to nominate Supreme Court justices unless there is some horrible, horrible reason, which I haven't seen from any of these confirmations. I thought Judge Gorsuch was, I expect great things from him. I thought he was an absolutely outstanding pick. Kavanaugh, kind of lukewarm on how I feel about him personally, but as a sitting senator, I believe that it is the president's privilege, and unless there is a huge reason, I would vote to confirm.
Do you think that Judge Merrick Garland maybe should have gotten confirmation hearings?
I think that they probably should have gone ahead. I think that they set a really bad precedent with blocking that. If they wanted to, they could just block the entire Congress for an indefinite period, and I'm not sure that I have a problem with that either.
One of the issues that the Supreme Court has weighed in on many times is gun control. It's a big push from Democrats. What would you do as far as that issue? I'm assuming that you probably are not in favor of gun control, right?
I'm not in favor of gun control. I think a lot of things, whether we're talking about back in the Prohibition days, our current war on drugs, gun control, money in politics, which was one of the things that Ben picked up in his thing. When we start trying to ban things, the only thing that we really wind up doing is we drive it underground and we create a black market to fill that need, to fill that void. And so my concern on all of those things, on these, we have to ban, banning straws. We created a straw black market in California. Can we get more ridiculous than that?
Right.
So I'm opposed to bans. I don't think that they fulfill the purpose that people want. I think that they only hurt good law-abiding citizens, and those that were going to do what they wanted to do anyway are not going to pay any attention to a simple ban.
So you brought up the war on drugs. I know a lot of our neighboring states, or especially at least Colorado, I'm thinking of, has legalized marijuana, right? There's recreational marijuana out there. They've made a lot of tax revenue from that. What do you think about that issue in particular, and then the regulations that go with it and the tax revenue that comes from it?
I fully support the legalization of marijuana. I think it's almost weekly now that we're coming up with a new medical use. The medical uses are just staggering. They put some of the pharmaceutical research to shame. As far as taxing it goes, I generally don't like taxes, but I will say that consumption taxes are a lot easier to go with than income taxes. It's a tax on productivity. The more productive you are, the higher your tax. To me, that's just ridiculous. If we want to put taxes on consumption, that's a lot easier for me to deal with. Especially when it's something that we don't want widespread use.
It's a voluntary decision, right? Nobody's forcing you to do it.
Yes.
Okay. Jim, stick with us. We're going to take a short break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk tariffs and health care and education and more about defense. You're watching KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle. This is a special Commitment 2018 edition of KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle. We've been talking this morning with Libertarian Senate candidate Jim Schultz. I know, Jim, we talked a little bit about the economy and deficits and stuff like that, but not actually tariffs yet. Those have been the hot topic here of late. Where do you stand on the president's tariffs?
I think the president's tariffs are a terrible mistake. I support free markets. I think the free market, can take care of itself without interference from government. When everything is said and done, basically tariffs are a tax. Who's getting that money? That money is going to the government, and it's coming from either our farmers as producers or on the tariffs on incoming things that he's placed. It's being paid by consumers. So it's just a backdoor tax on consumers and Americans, and I'm opposed.
What would you say to farmers who you've talked with on the campaign trail about the tariffs and how they're affecting their business?
Most of the farmers that I've talked to really want open markets. They don't want to get into these trade wars with our partners. The soybean farmers are very concerned because the Chinese were not going to just sit around and wait for us to work out a deal. They've already invested millions of dollars down in Brazil, which is already the world's largest soybean producer. Those markets have shifted off to Brazil, and there's a very good chance that they are never coming back.
So your opponent in this race, and the incumbent, Senator Deb Fischer, has talked a lot about this, said tariffs are bad, we hope the president doesn't keep doing this. It's been a lot of talk. especially from everybody in the Senate, right? It's all
Yes.
talk, and there's been very little action to kind of block these tariffs. If that's really what they want to do, what would you do in the Senate to kind of stand up to these tariffs?
Well, I would vote for any measure that came up to block from either party. Right now it's kind of hard to decide or to determine who the friends of a free market economy are and who the foes are, because there's a lot of crossover between both parties on that issue, and a lot of it is just politics in general. I think that Congress does need to assert themselves into this matter. Right now they seem to be running from it like they run from every other big issue.
One of the things that we hear from people a lot is about the rising cost of healthcare, right? It seems like those prices have gone up and up and up. How do you address that?
Well, I think the first thing is you need to realize where those rising costs are coming from. I had heard a administrator who works at the Fairbury Hospital talking about the fact that the mandates in the Affordable Care Act for digital record keeping were going to cost the Fairbury Hospital $2 million to implement, and then hundreds of thousands of dollars a month just to run. These are not health care costs. These are government mandate costs that are put on top of everything. The government interfering in the healthcare system has not made anything better. We were promised healthcare savings with the Affordable Care Act, and they never materialized. Starting in year one, we saw accelerated price hikes. We need to get back to a more capitalist, market-driven healthcare system where doctors are free to open their own offices. Right now you're seeing huge consolidations because of these mandates. Doctors no longer have single provider practices anymore. Everybody is grouping up into hospitals and large groups.
So one of the criticisms of the Affordable Care Act is how it has affected prices. Though the price of health care was rising before the Affordable Care Act went into place, so is there a structural problem in the healthcare
I think
industry?
One of the big things is any system that you have that has heavy government interference, whether it's healthcare, education is another one. Housing markets in California, if you look at that, they're constantly passing new regulations. You now have to have solar panels on all new construction in the state of California. Anytime you start getting the government involved in those things, you kill the market efficiencies that are built in there, and it just creates an upward spiral.
Let's shift to education. There's been a lot of talk, at least in Nebraska. There's a very robust public education system in Nebraska. A lot of people were critical of Senator Deb Fischer's vote to confirm Betsy DeVos as education secretary. Where do you stand on the education issue, and even the Department of Education itself?
The Department of Education, I think, is one of those that we need to take a really strong look at eliminating. Most people don't remember the Department of Education is the newest federal department. It was created in the Carter administration, and at that time we were ranked like 12th in the world in math and 28th or something in science. And here we are 50 years later, and we're still ranked exactly the same. This is one of those programs where we need to take a look at it and say, are we getting anything out of this program? Has it made a difference in education? Has educational opportunities increased? And if the answer is no, we need to get rid of it.
So we talked about this earlier in the half hour, about defense spending and just kind of where the cuts need to come from in spending in the government. There's a lot of men and women who work at Offutt Air Force Base here in the Omaha area who are members of the Department of Defense. What would you say to them about plans to cut military spending?
Well, I think the military spending cuts need to be targeted. I wouldn't include Offutt. Personally, I think that until we get some other programs up and running, I would leave the staffing levels for the military alone. But depending on who you get your numbers from, we have between 700 and 800 foreign military installations around the world. The rest of the world combined has about 35. I would love to, let's start with close down 200 of them. I think we can probably, go way past that number. But as a start, let's just target 200 foreign military sites. Shut them down, bring the personnel back to the states, station them here. I'd love to see us untangle ourselves from the mess in the Middle East. We're doing nothing but paying, in treasure and blood over there. And then, there's a lot of weapon systems that the generals are saying they don't need, but because they're being built in some congressman's district, they get pushed through Congress, whether they wanted to or not.
What would you say to those who make the argument better to fight the enemy over there than here?
It's actually better to not make an enemy of these people. Every time we drop a bomb over there and it kills one terrorist, we create 5 more. They just had a report released last week that ISIS is stronger than ever. They've lost ground over the last year, but they're more organized, they're more determined, they're better funded. And the idea that we can bomb people into democracy and Western values is simply absurd.
All right, Jim, we'll be right back with some final thoughts and why Jim Schultz thinks you should vote for him this November. First, a reminder that your comments are an important part of the show. If you want to be heard, email your comments to news@ketv.com. Remember, we love hearing from you. We'll be right back. This is KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle. Good morning to you. I'm David Earl. Today we've been talking with U.S. Senate candidate Jim Schultz, who's representing the Libertarian Party on the November ballot. We don't have much time left, but we want to give you, Jim, a final minute here to make your final pitch to the voters on why they should choose you this November.
Well, we started out this program talking about draining the swamp and some of the proposals that Senator Sass had put out. Draining the swamp is really going to take, putting the current parties that hold all of the powers feet to the fire by challenging them with third-party candidates. We need to break this back and forth duopoly that keeps control of our country and start bringing in new ideas, new alternatives that are going to bring the size of government down, the scope of government, and the cost of government. So in November, I'm asking that people vote for me to get that change and to get some real difference going in the swamp in Washington.
Jim, let me ask you why the Libertarian Party is so attractive to you.
Because it stands for individualism instead of just a collective. People are viewed as unique, dignified people.
All right, Jim, thanks so much for your time. That was Libertarian Senate candidate Jim Schultz. Next week here on Chronicle, Democrat Jane Raybould will be here. And then the following week here on Chronicle, incumbent Republican Senator Deb Fischer will join us. She is seeking her 2nd term in the United States Congress. Remember, if you missed any part of this show or you want to watch it again, it's online right now on KETV.com. Just go to our homepage and click on the menu button there, and then look for Chronicle. I'm David Earl. Thanks for watching. We'll see you right back here next Sunday morning for our special edition 2018 Commitment Reports on Chronicle.